Thank you, brothers. Good morning. So there's this older man who had this medical condition, and he walked into this very crowded medical office. And he finds his way to the line to get up to the nurse, receptionist. She says, "Well, sir, what's the problem?" He says, "Well, it's my penis." And she says, "Oh, sir, you don't say that out loud. Look at all these people. You've upset everybody." Then she starts to whisper and says, "Listen, if you have a problem with your penis, you come in and say something like this: 'It's my ear.'" And then she described things he could say. You got it? Well, he was really upset, and he was in a lot of pain. So he was so upset that he turned and he left the office. But as he got back to his car, he realized he couldn't stand anymore. So he comes back in the office, walks up with great dignity, slams his fist down, and he says, "I need to see the doctor." And she said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "It's my ear." "Oh." It's like, he's got it. "What's the matter with your ear?" "I can't pee out of it." An old man who can't laugh is a fool. And a young man who can't weep is a savage. St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Thessalonians, "I pray that you might become whole in body, soul, and spirit." In that one verse, Paul clarifies for us what our work is. It's about cultivating wholeness. Or perhaps a word that might strike you better, about cultivating a completeness, a fullness, a well-roundedness. In some scriptures, it might even be called a fulfillment of our own humanity. And so, what I would like to do is to share with you a very ancient Greek myth. Maybe some of you remember this myth. It's the story of Castor and Pollux. Because from the Greek perspective, they help us to understand what this wholeness is all about. It's about balancing heaven and earth. It's about working for a synthesis between this and that. Or as William Blake said so beautifully, we go to hell for the energy, and then we go to heaven for form and learn how to marry the two. Listen to this story. Queen Leda and Zeus got together and created these two sons. One was Castor, one was Pollux. Now Castor was mortal, but Pollux was immortal. These two brothers were inseparable. Their great affection for each other was known by everyone throughout the land. They both were gifted in powerful ways. Castor, for example, was well known to be able to manage and train and ride horses, where Pollux, his gift was in boxing. And as these boys grew up, like many of their age, they went through their ritual rite of passage, and lo and behold, they went into the wars. And they became honed in becoming great and well-known warriors. In fact, they even invented a special dance that all the warriors used and delighted in. Well, one day, their beautiful younger sister, Helen, I'm sure you've all heard of her, she was kidnapped by King Theseus. She was only 12 years of age. He was in his 50s. He wanted to keep her until she was of age so that he could marry someone who was connected to Zeus and to receive that heavenly power. Well, when the two brothers discovered that their sister had been kidnapped, of course, their manly ire rose up, and they took off, and they led an army, and they took her back. In the ensuing battle and victory, all of the Spartans rejoiced with these two great heroes. But you know, Castor and Pollux were not very good in their love life. They were much better in terms of their warriorship. Because not too long after, they were invited to this great love feast where there was a wedding taking place. And both of them, their eyes were cast upon two different maidens, Phoebe and Halvira. And they didn't even ask permission. They just kidnapped them and took them off. But they were already betrothed to their own cousins. Now the cousins were enraged that their own cousins would dare to do something like this. And so off they went. And a battle ensued, and lo and behold, Castor was killed. And Pollux was wounded. He too would have been killed in the sense that you and I would understand, but his father Zeus intervened and killed his enemy with a lightning bolt. When Pollux discovered his brother had been killed, there were no words to speak about his grief. He was overwhelmed so deeply by the pain of never being able to see his brother alive again. And so he begged his father Zeus to take his life. And even though Zeus himself was touched by the great affinity that he had for his brother, he said, I can't do that. You're immortal. You know your brother was mortal. This is the pain of being human. Well, Pollux was inconsolable. This went on for weeks and months. And finally he begged his father, would you please figure out something? I cannot continue living like this. And then Pollux hit upon an idea. He said, can I not at least spend half my time in Hades with my brother and the other half on Mount Olympus? Zeus thought about it and said, your wish is granted. And so it was, this arrangement worked out for a while. Half the year he spent in Hades with his brother. The other half, his brother was allowed to come to Mount Olympus so that they could be together. But this only worked for a time. And then Pollux went back to Zeus and said, this is not working. Please, can you not do something to end the suffering that both of us are experiencing? And Zeus says, I cannot break the laws that we gods have made. Well, he knew and he admired the depth of feeling that both of his sons had for each other. And so finally he decreed, I will grant eternal life to your brother. And so it was that Castor was made fully conscious and fully immortal. And in that synthesis, he joined his brother on Mount Olympus. And today, they are honored this great love, this great synthesis, by the Gemini star constellation. So that all of humanity, when we look up and see that constellation, we're reminded of the work that each of us have to do as men, as human beings. Learning how to balance heaven and earth. Learning how to synthesize both sides. So as we look at our humanity, we see that we are a mixture, that there's the heavenly and the earthly. There is the aspect, as Paul refers to, of this Trinitarian nature that we have to learn how to synthesize. That truth resides in all three aspects of our humanity. So if I could dare to summarize what these three truths are, here we go. Our spirit is about how we observe or judge reality. It's the way we read it. Our soul is about how we experience reality. And our body is how we live in that reality. All three pivot around that whole call to be whole, to be complete, to be human. I'd like to focus on the aspect of the soul because so many of us have not really learned what it means to carry for our masculine soul. The soul has two distinct functions. The first one is the function of the life principle. This is what brings energy to your being. This is what reminds you that tension is a good thing. Is that when you pray or you seek or you work for one virtue, for one good, it will necessarily constellate the opposite so that you do that work of synthesizing both and standing betwixt and between that powerful, heavenly, sacred energy. The second distinct function of the soul is the unity principle. This is about bringing all parts of your humanity together. And this, brothers, is what this weekend is all about. How do you bring all aspects of your humanity together in a respectful, humble, and life-giving way? Now, we can lose our connection to our own soul by being overcharged or undercharged. And this is why we pray for wisdom. And we seek this holy wisdom because we need to know when to heat up the soul and when to cool it down. It's dangerous when you confuse the two. You know what it's like when you overcharge a battery or you forget to charge a battery. So it is with your soul. So I'd like to offer you this morning just 4 keys to growth in our own humanity. And we turn to, as we heard Joel speak about, and you'll hear again from Jim and from Belden, we turn to nature, Mother Nature, to teach us the wisdom and depth of how we can grow, how we can deepen our humanity in its fullness. These are the inbred, if you will, lessons of creation. The first one is connection. Connection. And for me, I see the metaphor, the symbol of the soil embodying this word. When we reflect, when we look at, when we observe nature, we notice that all of the cosmos is intimately connected at the microscopic level and the macroscopic level. It's both. I'm from California, and one of the things we take great pride in is our national parks. And up along the coast, there are some very famous coastal redwoods. Perhaps you've heard of them. They are the tallest living creatures on the planet. And I was fascinated to learn that the reason they can grow so tall and large is because of the root system. Do you know the root system of a redwood tree is not very deep at all? It may surprise you. It's very shallow. But what keeps it standing tall and strong is all of the roots are connected. That's why they only grow in groves. See, even nature knows this lesson. So we recognize that it's service, intimate friendship, and community that reminds us of our own true connection as men, as human beings. It also helps to deflate our own tendency towards narcissism or individualism, that I can do it on my own. That by these particular insights, practices, connections, we learn the truth of what it is. So here's a question for you that I'd like you to write down in your journal, to reflect on either today or later on after our time together. It's this: what practices ground your own humanity or remind you of your own connections? What practices ground your humanity or remind you of your own connections? What is it you do that really helps you to be connected and not just to think about it? The second key to growth is rhythm. Rhythm. I liken this to the metaphor of water, in that, as you notice and observe, there is a cosmic rhythm to all of reality. There's a time to speak, and there's a time to be quiet. There's a time to act, and there's a time to wait. This is deep wisdom. What makes great music is the silence, the quiet, the pause between the notes. In many stories of creation, certainly in the Judeo-Christian scriptures, we see it clear that we are meant to pause in a Sabbath way, to rest as well as to work. So this is where we're invited to recognize we need to slow down and to honor the rhythm that has been naturally given to you as a human being, as a part of creation. We are neither above nor below creation. We are part of creation. Reminded the story of these 2 Englishmen who were big game hunters, and they went to Africa and they hired several African porters to carry their equipment across many, many miles to get to this particular big game preserve where they wanted to once again add to their collection. And they had paid the porters quite well. But after 4 days of marching across the land, through vehicle, through boat, etc., finally the head porter went to the hunter and said, we can't go any further. Of course, the hunter was really surprised. What is it? You need more money? No, it has nothing to do with money. Well, what is it then? He said, my porters have told me that they cannot go any further because they have to stop and wait for their souls to catch up to their bodies. There is a people who understand there's a time to work and a time to rest. Where in your life do you need to slow down? Where in your life do you need to slow down? The third key is singularity. Singularity. The metaphor that I like to think of when I think of singularity is light. Light. Every aspect of creation has a purpose. Let me repeat that. Every aspect of creation has a purpose. And that's why we're called to be mindful of the moment, the person, the encounter, the situation. A rock is not a river. A rose is not a palm tree. You get the point. Let me share with you one of my favorite poems by Rumi. It's entitled The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of all its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Solitude helps us to see clearly and helps us to transform our loneliness into a sense of gratitude for who we are and for what is. Perhaps that's why so many of us men spend so much time just being active, thinking that it won't catch me, whatever it is. Running and running and running and increasing pace. Perhaps that's why many of us turn to alcohol or to drugs. All sorts of ways to escape this. But brothers, it's only in the time of being alone, with the great alone, that we discover the great truth, the core of the Christian myth, and that is, salvation only happens when you face, when you confront, when you truly look at what is it that ails you? What is it that pains you? What is it you're most afraid of? In a strange twist of wisdom, the Creator uses that to transform you and all of us. And the work that you do in counsel, the work that you do as you trust your story vulnerably with great courage, that's what makes you truly a man. Because you see, the real sign that a boy's become a man is when he stops thinking about himself. He begins to realize in a strange way that your story, when you bring it to the table, when you bring it to the circle, is what helps other men as well. When you keep it to yourself, we are less a brotherhood. We are less a community. Or perhaps at this time in life, you've given yourself over to a disease of the mind. No, I'm not talking about amnesia. I'm talking about scotosis. Have you heard of that word? Scotosis. S-C-O-T-O-S-I-S. Look it up for yourself. It's a censoring of the mind against unwanted wisdom or a self-imposed blind spot. And it often happens in groups, churches, and communities. Brothers, this is why we need time of solitude, to get right with the Creator, to have the courage to be able to stand up against blindness, the things we don't want to listen to, accept, or appreciate about ourselves. So the question I have for you, this third point, is what have you been created for? What have you been created for? There's a purpose for your life. So often we look outside ourselves, but actually it's hidden inside, where all the great lessons of the Creator are placed. What have you been created for? And the last key I'd like to share with you is darkness. Darkness. And the symbol that I think of when I look at creation, the way it grows, is shit, fertilizer, manure, reprocessed life. Call it whatever you want. Have you ever reflected on the fact that the majority of growth happens underground and in darkness? Underground and in darkness. And so it is for us at the level of the soul. Think of the dark night of soul, dark night of senses, the dark night of struggle in a relationship that you have. You may feel like you've been cut adrift. In reality, perhaps it's the best gift that's been given to you. I don't know if you've heard of the plant called the Chinese bamboo, but it's a fascinating plant. When you get ready to plant it, it looks just like a stick. And you put it in the ground, and you water it, and you wait. And you will not notice a single change for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years before the first green shoot starts to sprout. You want to know why? Because for those 5 years, it's building a huge 5-mile root system. Because the Chinese bamboo can grow straight up 90 feet, but it needs a strong platform of roots so that when the winds come, and they will, it will bend every which way. And so it is when you feel in darkness, when you feel like you're truly in Hades, in the underground, just know that a deep root system is growing within you. A very popular word that's been popularized by C.G. Jung in this work is shadow work. Shadow work. This is what addresses our unlived life. But often in groups of men, we talk about the shadow work, we immediately think of all the negative. Actually, there's 2 aspects, at least 2 aspects to the shadow. It's recognizing the golden shadow as well as the dark shadow. So when we are disconnected from our underground, from our unlived life, from our shadow side, what happens is it comes out in the form of bitterness and depression and low energy. Because the half-lived life is the price paid for choosing not to go down into the underworld, not to do the work that Castor and Pollux emulated and begged Zeus to give them that gift. This is the work, brothers. Let me give you a couple of quick stories to illustrate this. Anthony Bloom, very famous archbishop, once was met by a young man. And Bloom agreed to see him. He came before him and he said, Archbishop, he said, I used to be a very, very religious man. I would pray and I'd do all these things, but I've lost my faith. And the Archbishop said, why have you lost your faith? And he began to tell him a story. He looked him straight in the eye and he says, I want you to promise me for the next 30 days, you go home and you pray every day with 100 prostrations, meaning that you kneel down, kiss the floor, stand up again, and repeat that 100 times every day for 30 days. Then come back and see me. And when he came back, the young man's eyes were just blazing with energy, filled with this vibrant love. And he said to the Archbishop, what happened to me? He said, I just feel like I'm on fire with God. And he said, you are. But why? What happened? He says, you were disconnected from your body. Changing your prayer form connected you again with your soul. How many of us allow ourselves only to pray with our heads and forget that we have that Trinitarian nature? I pray that you might become whole, body, soul, and spirit. The lessons that we're learning from Illuman are teaching us how to do this, how to reclaim our humanity. The underground aspects of our humanity that we buried, we've thrown away, we've forgotten. I promise you, brothers, as you do that work, you'll find new energy. You'll find another way of being yourself. Robert Johnson tells the story of having a dream several decades ago, before he was very well known. In the dream, he dreamt about this house, this old house. He saw himself walking into the house on the first floor, And then there was a door open to the basement. He walked down the basement, very, very dark, but off into the left side, there was another door ajar, and there was a light coming from it. And so he tentatively walked over to the door. He peeked in, and there was a man at the desk writing. And when he woke up, he knew what the dream was telling him, that there was an author, a writer inside him. That's when he began to do the work of writing. Where would we be without a man like Robert Johnson if he didn't heed this underground message from his shadow? You need to write. And write he did. And he's helped literally thousands of people. Brothers, this is the dual work of reclaiming your gold and your shit. It's not one or the other, it's both. And just like Castor and Pollux, it's in the synthesizing the two we realize that's right, as Richard has taught us. We are nothing more than little shits. And yet at the same time, oh yes, at the same time we're beloved sons. How can you carry the tension of that? Because that is balancing heaven and earth. Knowing that we share in both realities. So I'd like to finish with a personal story. It means nothing if we don't take this on board. This just happened about 6 weeks ago. I was spending my day off with a couple of friends of mine, and I share this with you, and I mention their culture because it's important in the story. It's an Asian couple. And I was chauffeuring them around downtown Los Angeles, and they live in Koreatown. So as I'm driving around, the wife loves to do shopping, and Alex and I typically stay in the car and just take a nap while she shops, okay? He and I are both introverts, and so we rarely say anything, which drives her nuts. You know, what do you mean you didn't talk? We just sit here and enjoy each other's company. So she came back from her shopping, and she sits down in the car, and she says, I got to go to the bathroom. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? She says, well, I get really nervous doing public places, but can you find a place? And I turned to Alex, we both agreed on this particular store. So I drive over, lo and behold, there's a traffic jam to get into the parking lot. Meanwhile, Morose has to go so bad, she's literally holding her legs tight. So I'm caught with the tension of trying to get her to some place of release for her. And I look up ahead, and the two parking lot attendants are carrying on a casual conversation with a person in the front. But from my observation, she's not recognizing that she started a whole traffic jam because the whole street is blocked up now, because all the cars that want to get in the parking lot. So in my unconsciousness, as soon as the car in front of me moves by, I don't even stop to get a ticket. I just start driving as quick as I can to get a parking lot. In the back, I hear the woman yelling, "Sir, sir, sir." I just ignored her. And I zipped into a parking spot. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, as long as Morose is going to use the toilet here, I'll get out and buy something that I really need right away, and I'll hurry back. Now, this was a hot summer day. We were having a hot spell at this time. So I race in the store. I find what I need. I'm standing at the checkout counter, and here comes Alex in his wonderful Asian posture. And he says, "Father Jim," just like that, "Father Jim, could I borrow your keys, please? It's getting hot in the car, and we didn't want to leave your car unlocked and unguarded." And in a flash of shame, I said, by all means. I went out with him quickly. I apologized profusely to both of them. But what struck me was what I would call a shadow attack. That experience stayed with me for 3 weeks because I knew it was deeper than what was there. Because you see, I experienced myself, and people would tell me, "Oh, Jim, you're such a gentle man. You're so kind." I was mean and preoccupied with myself, with no real concern for these two people that I love dearly. It struck me so hard. And I got to tell you, it not only saddened me, but it led me to deep grief. I said, I teach this stuff. What the hell is the matter with me? That's the way the shadow is. It pulls us down when we need more of that energy, that life, that wholeness. And so, as I began to do that, to sit in Hades for just long enough to get the message, lo and behold, what came up resurrected was gratitude, fullness, and a sense of joy. So brothers, the last question I have for you is, what do you need What do you need to reclaim from the darkness of your own interior? What do you need to reclaim from the darkness of your own interior for your wholeness and energy? For your wholeness and energy. What do you need to reclaim from the darkness of your own interior life for your own wholeness and energy? So right now, for some of you, it may be gold. For others, it may be shit. Okay, we're going to send you off now into nature. We're going to ask that the council carriers meet over here. Jim, you want them here in the corner, outside in the hall? What do you need to reclaim from the darkness of your own interior for your own wholeness and energy? So, council carriers, if you could meet in the corner here. As you go forth, here's the question that we would invite you to chew on. That is, just spend the next 30 minutes noticing nature. Notice how it grows in all different terrains. On hillsides, in gullies, in dry spots. Notice where it's not growing. And the question that we'd like you to chew on is, what is growing within you? What is growing within you? So brothers, once again, when you hear the drum, that's the sign for you to head towards council. Is that next? To head. Oh yeah, 30-minute break. So actually you have an hour before council, if you look at your schedule. Okay, and again, just want to underline, being on time is essential. Okay? Any other questions? Blessings, brother. Yep. Is that, Jim, what time is that? 10:45. 10:45. 10:45. Peace, brothers.